Today we ask the question, are there hidden messages within the Old Testament of the Bible? Proverbs chapter 25 says, God gets glory from concealing things. Kings get glory from investigating things. A lot of you may have heard about the field of study called Torah code or Bible code. People talk about the mathematical significance, they talk about hidden messages unique to the Bible, but do we truly understand how unique these messages are? We are getting progressively closer to understanding God's hidden message through a scientific procedure called ELS, or equidistant letter sequence, which is essentially a method of encoding or encrypting a message within a text, skipping an equal amount of letters. Seeking this out is the method of decrypting the ELS, which from the Old Testament's original Hebrew lettering we call Bible code research, or when we limit our focus on the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, we call it Torah code research. Typically, a Torah code or Bible code researcher will show you the matrix of the terms searched in a particular ELS. They'll display some discoveries about relatable terms found within the matrix, which can often reveal things quite profound to our understanding. They may even describe how some of the terms contained in the ELS matrix are so relatable to one another. But this is often open to interpretation, and the results can be open-ended. Any onlooker could be quite confused at what they are seeing, without additional context to bring further understanding. Now, I'd like to show you one of my most recent Torah code discoveries. While I could drone on with mathematical statistics of this ELS matrix regarding the statistical significance of the code's occurrence against random chance, who cares about how profound the odds are, right? Some may, but we don't expect everyone to feel the same about that. We could also reveal a bunch of terms found connecting in the main search term. We could explore how the terms that connected with each other around the ELS matrix, like Roman, apparent, slap, and whatever at red to trait, are all highly relatable to the context of Nibiru and the sign of the bride. Perhaps it is a fish slap in the face of any that might deny the significance toward the apparent fulfillment of the secret Roman Catholic sign of the bride that precedes Nibiru. Even though these are all important aspects of Torah code research to talk about, that's not what we're going to discuss. Not today. Today we're going to explore something previously untouched by other Torah code researchers, a part of the research that brings greater understanding to the message. God most assuredly intended us to find this in the ELS and the Torah code or Bible code. We've discovered that often where the ELS letter of a search term occurs in the scripture of the Bible is a relatable message connecting between both the terms of the ELS matrix and in a specific placement within the original translated text of the Bible. Let's explore the first example within this code. Sign of the bride, blameless. Here we can see the examples of where each letter of the search term occurs within the scripture. As you can see, clearly displayed in the exact placement of where each letter appears in the book, chapter, verse, down to the letter. Now extending further, we see where each letter occurs beyond the search term within this ELS matrix. There are many examples of relevant occurrences within the scripture that we can explore here together, but for now we'll limit it to a chosen top 3. These connections I feel are the most obvious, relevant scripture connections displayed within this ELS matrix. Now let's start from the top. In the book of Genesis, chapter 6, we read from verse 11, which says, quote, "The earth was corrupt before God. The earth was filled with violence," end quote. This is from the translation called the Complete Jewish Bible. But let's examine the Strong's translation of each Hebrew word. Along this line appears the word for now was corrupt, and the earth, translating as now the earth was corrupt, crossing over the ELS for the Hebrew year 5776, which on the English calendar is 2015 and 2016. And here is the ELS for Iyar, which is the month of May and June on our calendar, which also happens to be the time frame of this Torah code discovery and this video production. Perhaps you're thinking this is all just coincidental and requires further confirmation. Well, it appears that our wise Creator had this in mind prior to our discovery. As we look further in the text where we read, "and was filled the earth," reading further, we would read "with violence." But it appears we don't have to, because here we see an ELS 5-letter Hebrew word vertically reading that means violence. Now moving forward onto our next confirmation, in the book of Genesis, chapter 41, verse 57, we read, quote, "Moreover, all countries came to Egypt, to Joseph, to buy grain, because the famine was so severe throughout the earth." And where the ELS terms, flare and free of charge, appear in this verse is precisely intersecting over the Hebrew word translating as "so was severe," or continued, "so severe was the famine in all the lands." We might presume that's the end of this confirmation, but in addition to this, we see a revelation regarding this as a sign preceding another sign. A term that is revealing itself also in a very precise placement over the Hebrew word for "when saw." Crossing this word is the ELS term Nibiru. So this could read quite easily that a severe famine will strike all the lands and will be a time when we see Nibiru. Amazing context revealed in this method of researching the Bible code. Could there possibly be another confirmation in this matrix more profound than what we've been shown so far? It's quite possible, so let's look at just a couple of lines further down this ELS. In the book of Exodus, chapter 9, verse 22, we read, "Adonai said to Moses, reach out your hand toward the sky, so that there will be hail in all the land of Egypt, falling on the people, the animals, and everything growing up from the field, throughout the land of Egypt." Now, where do we see the ELS matrix confirmations? But again, through very relatable terms crossing precisely where they should to bring further context and explanation to a profound meaning within this matrix. We see 3 crossings of ELS terms over this scripture. One is stamen, which means a pollen-producing reproductive organ of a flower or plant, but also the terms time, which can translate as season, and the term flare, all crossing this line of scripture precisely on this portion of the scripture and on every plant of the field. A profound context is revealed here. The plague of fire raining from heaven upon every plant of the field in the time of Exodus from Egypt, and a strikingly similar prediction given about our time. Could this be a confirmation and a warning regarding a certain prophecy about the first trumpet from the book of Revelation? Chapter 8, verse 7 says, "And the first sounded, and there was hail and fire mixed with water, and they were cast upon the earth, and a third of the earth was burned, and a third of the trees burned, and all the grass of the earth burned." Considering this effect, and also the term flare in the ELS matrix, along with its very specific placement, it appears that this could also be a possible fulfillment from the verse of Revelation, chapter 16, verse 8. "The fourth one poured out his bowl on the sun, and it was permitted to burn the people with fire." When we consider current events related to these topics, it most definitely appears that this method of deeper research in the Bible code has given us further wisdom. This is what God intends for us to discover upon further research of His hidden message, and we see in this ELS code found within the Hebrew writings of the Old Testament. We have numerous confirmations proving the value of this method, but as I said, we're only going to stick with the top 3 that I chose to reveal to you today. I think that we may be able to make more time for additional confirmations in another video. Please join us next time, God willing. This presentation was brought to you by the Temple of the Messiah and ABN News. I'm Clark Isaac from The Whole Truth on ABN, and this was Unsealing the Scroll. Keep seeking the truth, and may God bless you.